Hi, let's take a look at to a new question which is based on poetry, right? The question is explore the presentation of everyday life with reference to three poems in your collection. Explore the presentation of everyday life with reference to three poems in your collection. So, as usual, when you get a question, what you have to do is to find out what are the major words in your question. So here the question it says to explore. Explore means what? Explore does not mean to comment, not to analyze, not to criticize. Explore means to examine, or it can mean experiencing, or it can mean navigating, right? So you are supposed to explore. Explore what? The presentation of everyday life. So what do you mean by everyday life? Everyday life means the way people act, the way people think, or the way people feel, daily basis, right? The way people act or think or feel on day-to-day life. Further, the day-to-day life can be mundane, it can be a routine, it can be natural, it can be habitual, it can be normal. The man wakes up in the morning, do the work, goes to bed at night. Right? So what happens during that time can be a mundane something, can be a routine, can be natural something, can be habitual something, or can be normal. So what you have to do through the question exploring, you have to explore the presentation of everyday life, which means you are supposed to examine or to experience or to navigate how the everyday life is represented, how it is presented through three poems in your collection. So what the everyday life is this what I have told you earlier. Then you have to explore on that. So when you identify the major words in your collection, it would be easy for you to find out what poems you have to take. Otherwise, if you, without analyzing the main words of the question, when you think about what poems I should take, then it will be hard. So it will be easy, and also at the same time you can make your own introduction, like you are analyzing the main words in the question in your introductory part, and you can end your introduction by talking about what are the three poems you are going to take for the question. So the introductory paragraph, then you can introduce at the end of the introductory paragraph, you can introduce the three poems you are going to talk about. Then take the three poems one by one, and you can write similar amount of paragraphs in your answer. That's your structure, and you can give a conclusion at the end. Once again, conclusion quite similar to your introduction, which is about the presentation of everyday life. So before starting the question, I will repeat the question once again. Explore the presentation of everyday life with reference to three poems in your collection. So you can select your own poems. Here are the poems that I have selected. I selected Money by Philip Larkin, Morning at the Window by T.S. Eliot, and Spring and Fall by G.M. Hopkins. So Money, the poem Money by Philip Larkin, which is based on money and happiness, how human happiness depends on money. Or at the end of the poem, you can talk about the poet makes a sociological approach by looking how money creates inequitable power relations in society, or the hypocrisy of the people, or how the society ignores the poor people. The last stanza of the poem. Then, how money creates class difference, the slums and the upper class, the class distinction in the society. Or else you can talk about, you can talk about the estranging quality of money. The estranging quality of money in modern times. What is estranging? Estranging means the feeling of alienation, isolation. So what kind of, how money has isolated the man, how money has made the man alienated. Because the last quotation of the poem, it says, it is intensely sad. So we can talk about that. Money as something that has dehumanized society, which depends heavily on the power. The money gives power to the man. Then money becomes the ruling. Like money includes the human happiness. Money is money is something that decides human relationships. But finally, money is something that estranges you from the society, which alienates you from the society. And the main thing you can talk about is the class distinction, the class difference that creates by the money, or the social, how the poet makes a sociological approach, because our question is representation, the presentation of everyday life. So how the class difference has become a part of everyday life, how dehumanization, or how hypocrisy becomes a part of human life, everyday life. And also the money, I told you what is everyday life. Under that I said the everyday life can be something mundane, it can be something routine. So how money becomes part of this everyday life. Okay, so that is about the poem Money. You can make a enough paragraph for that. Then you can start your third paragraph with another poem. I thought of selecting Morning at the Window by T.S. Eliot. Because the poem gives you modern urban life, a picture of, which is full of images with the picture of a modern human life. So the poem has a human picture of poverty, depression, misery, plus that how the feelings are connected with the day-to-day imagery. How the poet interconnects the human feelings with the day-to-day imagery. How man struggles in life. Plus that you can talk about how poverty becomes part of life once again, like the poem Money. And the human depression, because we are talking about how the, once again, what? Presentation of everyday life. So how poverty becomes part of everyday life once again. Or how depression becomes part of everyday life. And I think you all can remember once I told T.S. Eliot's the poem Preludes. He talks about like a man is like as if he is getting ready for a masquerade. Man pretends to be happy. Man pretends to have a mask. But inside the person suffers the human depression. So how the human life is presented through the poem, you can nicely describe with reference to the poem Morning at the Window. Finally, you can take the poem by G.M. Hopkins, which is Spring and Fall. Spring and Fall, it's basically about the poet gives a philosophical definition of human life. The idea of melancholy, especially, you know what the melancholy is, the sadness, or once again the human depression. Then how the human lives are subjected to melancholy, because it is natural that man goes quickly closer to the sadness than the happiness. Man gets close to the sadness easily than getting close to the happiness. So that is also something that most of the poets discussed in their poetry. So here basically the poem is about the idea of melancholy and how the human lives are subjected to melancholy, which is once again the question what? Presentation of everyday life. So you can talk about everyday life is subjected to melancholy. Everyday life, then you can explain further by relating with the season of autumn. Autumn means what? Decaying. Then you can interconnect, right? Then the fact that naturally people grieve, naturally people suffer. Then why people suffer? The poet further discusses about the people suffer for the mortality, the fact that they die. People cannot accept that. So we can, that is the reality of life. That's why we categorize the poem as a philosophical definition of human life. So the question, you can interconnect with the question because it presents how with the everyday life, how the melancholy has become part of the everyday life. Okay, then we have 3 poems. You can give a nice introduction. The question once again, explore the presentation of everyday life with reference to 3 poems in your collection. So you can take half an hour and make a nice answer. Even your conclusion you can base with 1 or 2 lines, something related to your introductory paragraph. Right? Then all together we can make four long paragraphs plus a short conclusion. So we'll see you with another question later. Okay, bye.